Hello there, everybody, and welcome to year two of D2Football.com's NSIC weekly podcast. This first episode of the season is our 2023 Northern Sun Conference preview. I'm longtime play-by-play voice of the University of Sioux Falls, Tom Frederick, along with D2's Northern Sun Conference columnist Matt Witwicki. Now, though the thermometer reads triple digits today, rest assured, summer is giving away to football season. And since we last published one of these here podcasts, Whit, my friend, you've been a busy boy. What has kept you active since the last time we talked for public consumption, other than serving as a roving batting instructor for your youth baseball leagues, wrangling two youngsters, and hitting that new ice cream parlor, which is just down the street from your joint? What have you been up to?
Tom, that new ice cream joint, B&G, is they got my money already, and they know how to keep me fat. That's for sure. But latest with my boys, my son Wyatt, 16 years old now. He's playing, just finished up baseball, now doing some football, sophomore. Then my youngest Brett, 8th grade, and he's had a setback. He ended up having a partial tear in his knee, and so he's going to end up missing football this season, and kind of down about it. But so we're busy this time of year. Tom, a lot of folks that follow us, our loyal fan base, doesn't know that you fell off your bike and hurt yourself a little bit out riding, doing that exercising thing. Tell everybody a little bit about how you're doing.
We have a fan base? Are you sure about that? We should cue the Wicked Witch music. Elvira Gulch from The Wizard of Oz riding her bike with a little Toto on the back there. Dun, 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 dun. Get that? Okay. Well, I was minding my business. I spent a lot of time since last winter watching television, The Lincoln Lawyer, Justified, City Primeval, Only Murders in the Building, Mr. Ed. No response from Whit on Mr. Ed. I've been shooting free throws.
I'm soaking that one in, yeah.
I've been playing golf. And as you mentioned, I like the bike. I've put nearly 1,000 miles on my trusty steed until that unfortunate spill.
Oh.
It wasn't that bad. I didn't end up in
a live shot, live look.
Yeah. I suffered a broken rib when I fell 3 weeks ago. That shut down most of my activities, except for a quick trip to California and attending a good number of USF football practices. I guess I might be the only NSIC play-by-play guy this fall wearing a flak jacket / vest. It's been, again, 3 weeks. I still can't get a good night's sleep. You can't get comfortable. So it's been a chair, it's been a bed. I think I'm going to have to try 2 edibles when I go to bed at night as opposed to just one gummy.
Well, enough about you being hurt. Let's get back to
you asked.
So you still watch Mr. Ed. I just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
Oh, Wilbur. Yes, I do.
Fair enough.
Well, the NSIC has seen a multitude of changes since we last dropped an episode. New coaches, bye-bye Peacocks, so long silo scheduling, and just this week, word that an institution has applied for membership in the Northern Sun. So, big man, you've let nothing get past you the last 8 months. Can you enlighten our listener, our devoted fan base, just how the NSIC landscape has changed from a year ago?
Yeah, as you kind of alluded to, Tom, Upper Iowa left kind of almost like the middle of the night, like the Colts back in the day. And with that in mind, left the league with 13 teams. And now there's no North or South divisions, at least for a little while. And as a result of that, with 13 teams in the league, out-of-conference play is now a thing, which, I've been beating that drum for how long? 2011 is the last time the league saw it. So I'm thrilled with the idea of seeing matchups like Augie going to Shadron, Winona State going to Saginaw Valley right out of the gate, and then USF, pretty ambitious undertaking going to Pitt State, and some other games like that. So I'm thrilled with all of that. Moving forward, you kind of alluded to something that's just breaking news right now, which is Jamestown, University of Jamestown up in North Dakota, about 90 minutes west of Fargo. Does that sound about right, Tom?
That's about right. Midway between Fargo and Bismarck.
Yeah. They are saying that they're basically have applied, and the athletic director confirmed that today, that they are seeking membership in the Northern Sun to kind of even out the number of teams again. So Jamestown's a school about the size of Sioux Falls, if I remember right, about 1,000 students. And, they've been kind of on the lower portion of football performance in the GPAC recently in the NAIA. So, but they're a little bit better in some other sports. So it's an interesting development. I'm not entirely sure that all the Minnesota schools or some of the ones that would have to travel a little bit further are looking to find another reason to go up to North Dakota. You've traveled plenty, done plenty of those trips for basketball and football. We need another member in the league in all likelihood from just to get things even. I don't know if they're a perfect fit, but they may be the best fit available. What thoughts do you have when you saw that pop up, Tom?
Well, I read the story last night on Inforum from Eric Peterson out of Fargo, and they've got the facilities, they've got the money behind them. But my question is, how long would it take them to, transition from NEIA to NCAA Division II before they could become a member of the NSIC? It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. Well, you know what, that you're exactly right. But, some of these things have moved a little bit quicker than we thought in the recent past as well. So you wonder if the Northern Sun could move mountains if they wanted them in that badly or that quickly. So, I mean, all of this is so, new. But this isn't a shock at the same time, because we had gone ahead a few months ago. You and I had chatted when the Jimmies were going to have a Friday afternoon press release. And Tom, you'll probably recall, I thought that's what this was for. And I had heard whispers of this for a good amount of time. And it ended up being for a large financial gift. This isn't a shocker. And it's probably the team or university that's probably been most rumored to be the one joining the league.
Yeah. And, it kind of makes sense. There's already Mary and Minot there, and MSU Moorhead in the mix as well. So it's not like Upper Iowa out in, the hinterlands. It's in a geographic area where there are already other schools located. So it does make somewhat a logical decision.
Are you going to miss the ride out to Fayette, Tom?
That's not the worst one in the league. So,
Sure.
I'm not going to miss it, but it's not the worst one I've ever endured. So
Understood.
Yeah.
One last thing. How about, what are your thoughts about going to like a brand new venue like that you'll find in Pitt State?
Well, I kind of liken that to the Cougars' transition year of 2011 when they went down to Maryville, Missouri, met Northwest Missouri State. Great facility, excellent crowd, heck of a good football team, all that we'll encounter in October this year. I'm hoping for a better game than 12 years ago, though. The Bearcats treated USF rudely, spanking them 52-17. And then that night, my partner, Tim Hyatt, and I had a deer hit our car on the drive home. Glass everywhere.
You were only about what, like not even an hour north of Maryville at the time?
No, just barely crossed into Iowa when it happened.
Yeah.
Glass everywhere. We were pretty shook up. We were in better shape than the deer. And I know that won't happen this fall because we're going to be on the bus. But now, Pitt State, perennial playoff team, highly ranked again here in 2023. It'll be a great Week 9 test for a very young Sioux Falls squad and first-year coach Jim Glagowski. Now, Glow has experience against teams of this caliber, and his offensive coordinator, Lucas Luders, comes from Central Missouri of the MIAA, so they're not going to be awestruck. I'm hoping the players won't be either that late in the season at Week 9. There's a ton of portal movement, Wes. What's your name? Willie? Man, oh man. I'm tired out here just talking about that trip to Pitt State, the jungle. I got to protect myself. There's a ton of portal movement going on. And I don't mean in the manner of a space-time continuum, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever you want to call it, the Marvel Universe. It's probably more prevalent, a step up at the FBS level, but there have been some notable portal transactions here in the NSIC's offseason. And some of those, are eye openers. What stood out to you?
Well, certainly you saw University of Sioux Falls have some, and with Zach Durfee, defensive end who had a bunch of sacks. He's pretty well high up in the two deep over at University of Washington with former USF head coach Kalen DeBoer. Now, they also had some other transfers Sioux Falls did who found homes in the FCS. Brendan Moran and, Cody Jansen and some others. And all that kind of happened during some of that indecision shortly after John Anderson was let go by the University of Sioux Falls. So that is kind of due, I think, to some of that piece. But you also have movement in the league, such as Ali Muhammad from Minot State went to Bemidji State. Ali Muhammad was always considered maybe like the best player on a real bad team. And now all of a sudden he's, with maybe the best team in the league. Jalen Fry, running back from Minot, with that news, decided to go elsewhere and went to South Dakota Mines. You also see, the Gibson twins from Mary going to Duluth. And, guys who had been at Montana State, and they're good ball players and will immediately strengthen Duluth in the secondary. You see Mankato they brought in a handful of receivers from FCS and FBS programs to try and fill in voids. And then Canyon Bauer, local player here in Sioux Falls, had played a lot of meaningful snaps for South Dakota State, the FCS champion. And he's now dropped back, and he's going to be at Augustana. And that was a great receiving room as it was, and he adds a lot of depth at wide out for them. Playmaker we're probably going to talk about, I would say, quite a bit in future weeks. But, I think it's all kind of a part of the future of NCAA football. The portal is kind of a two-way street for every club. This isn't Northern Sun specific by any means. You need to minimize your departures of your top performers while still being able to find some FCS dropbacks because, it's kind of like some of these guys are playing fantasy football in here. So, going forward, if you're not mining the portal, you do kind of run the risk of falling behind in the overall talent exchange.
And it's not just football, it's basketball too. You have to go about re-recruiting your own team each year, which I find preposterous, but that's what we're living in here, 2023.
100%. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about who we have on the Northern Sun. Basically, essentially what we call our Elite 100 team.
Right. Each year, you and your buddies over at d2football.com release an All-American squad, if you will. You call it the Elite 100. And every August, the version of the Elite 100 is simply called a watch list because nobody's played yet. The Northern Sun has a significant representation on d2football.com's Elite 100. And they are, as you can see here on the screen, Bemidji quarterback Brandon Alt, running back Sheen Butler Lawson of Mankato, Moorhead receiver Gage Florence, Northern State wideout DeWaylen Ingram, Ty Cobb, the Bemidji offensive lineman, not the Detroit Tiger Hall of Famer, Augie O-lineman Blake Larson, Aiden Williams, UMD's standout O-lineman, Winona State linebacker Clay Scheffner, Mankato linebacker Jacob Dalton, another LB, this one from Wayne State, Alex Kowalczyk, Nyland Miller Levi, the corner from Minot, and MSU Mankato secondary standout Trey Vavel. Now, can you tell us a bit about the process of how the Elite 100 is compiled And then if you feel the NSIC is represented fairly compared to other D2 conferences nationally.
Fair question, Tom. There's 14 conferences in Division II football, and since we're picking 100 guys, the fact that there's 12 from the Northern Sun alone is a pretty good number. Now that said, there's some guys here that we've had on our Elite 100 team a year ago, like the Brandon Alts of the world, and Dwaylon Ingram was a guy on our Elite 100 group back in 2021. He missed a season and he's back, and we know how good a player he is. So that all said, if I now take a look at some of the other guys here, though, and kind of look at who some of the new additions are, Tom. First off, we've got linebacker Jacob Dalton from Mankato, probably their top defender. And then as we take a look, we also have Alice Kowalczyk from Wayne State, who is just a huge piece of what they do defensively with that football team, a tackling machine. So it's kind of neat to see some new names pop up on here. And the way that we go about this process in the first place, Tom, is whether it's myself, Brandon Meisner, obviously, who runs D2Football.com. And we also have Josh Buchanan, our scout, who covers basically anything from FCS down. And he goes ahead and provides us a lot of feedback on who's getting a lot of looks and who are pro teams going and visiting. Like you take a look, for example, at Nyland Miller-Levi in Minot. He's getting teams coming in to visit him because of his athleticism and because he can go up and get a ball and he runs well. So, I mean, you've got a kind of a mixed bag here. It's not just a return of who's the best players on the best teams. And that's kind of what we look at with the Elite 100 is not only the top performers at the level, but also some of the top prospects mixed in with that. Because it doesn't always end up being, people who have the best numbers who are the best prospects.
All right, the Elite 100 with 12 NSIC representatives on it here as we get set for Week 1 beginning next Thursday. Since this is the 2023 NSIC Football Preview Show, let's see how the coaches see this league well ahead of Week 1. Here's the poll. You see it there. Bemidji State is the pick to click, so to speak. The Beavers got 4 first mentions from the league's 13 coaches. Minnesota State Mankato second with 5 first-place ballots. Wayne State third with 2 first mentions. Augustana fourth. Vikings got 2 first-place ballots as well. Then Minnesota Duluth in 5th. Winona, the 6th choice. There was a tie for 7th between Sioux Falls and Northern State. SMSU is at 9. MSU Moorhead in the 10 spot. Concordia St. Paul at 11. And tied for last in the Northern Sun. It's Mary and Minot from up north. Your thoughts, big fella?
Yeah, I thought that this was maybe the most interesting preseason coaches poll we've seen in a while. And the reason for that is look at how many teams are receiving first place votes.
Pretty evenly split.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen years where it was clear cut, it was going to be Mankato and things of that sort. It speaks a lot to how Bemidji has really moved up and Wayne State as well. 5 years ago, we weren't talking about them in this mix at all. And, then you add to that, if we kind of look down the list, if I look all the way through who's tied for 7, which basically means the top 8 teams, if you take a look at last year's results, those teams were all beating each other. You had Northern State beat Mankato. You had Northern State beat Winona. You look across this, you had Sioux Falls beat Augustana. You had plenty of those teams that are in the lower portion of that top 8 beat some of the teams up at the top. And it really shows you, I can't recall the last time there was that much depth at that very top window. It's going to be very hard for a team to go unblemished and really put themselves in a position to host playoff games and things of that sort that you need to have with that kind of record, So it's great that it's that deep a conference. but it does kind of, sometimes it's going to hurt the champ come playoff time because they're probably not going to host a playoff game.
Your thoughts on the balance in the league and the parity in the league? Is it because the league is that strong, or the teams perhaps not quite what we've seen in the last decade with the powerhouses of Mankato, Duluth, etc.?
You know what? I think you have to kind of tip your hat to some of the new coaches who have come in the league. Bolte, Ed Bemidji, when I say new coaches, he hasn't been there super long, 2015, 16 or something like that. And he's moved them up a notch each year, a game or so, it seems like. Then you take a look across the board. You have newer coaches at Wayne State. You have, Winona, Northern, all of which who are in this conversation, who maybe haven't been that much in the conversation in the last 10 years in terms of being a playoff squad. Now, I know Northern State's not there just yet, but they've been knocking on the door each of the last 2 seasons. And the fact that we're talking about them as top 8, kind of speaks to where the program is probably moving to.
All right, fair enough. Now, the league also went out on a limb and named preseason players of the year for both sides of the ball. And where's the love for special teams? Come on. Last year.
Nothing like trolling me. I like it.
Okay. Brandon Alt of Bemidji is the preseason choice for Offensive Player of the Year. Seems pretty obvious to me. He's the marquee returning quarterback. He was a Harlan Hill Trophy nominee last year. And what is he? A Chris Winkie, like 30 years old, perhaps? He's been around forever.
The beauty of it is that none of these players are probably born when Chris Winkie played football. But in any event, it's really fun to watch how Alt has been such a gunslinger, and he's an electric player. And at the same time, you and I kind of talked a little bit last year about, maybe is there some other guys in the league that are every bit as important to their team, but no one is probably as dynamic a player offensively as he's been the last few seasons.
Brandon Alt, the preseason player of the year for offense in the NSIC. Defensively, the coaches went with a guy who's a grad student up there at Northern State University, Ian Marshall. Heck of a defensive tackle. What your thoughts on this guy who mans the middle as being the preseason choice for best defender?
Considering how much production he gets from the defensive tackle position, it's really impressive if you think about it. It took him about 2 weeks to get really known last year. And, he kind of went on a tear from there. It's really hard to see anyone else really in that conversation because of what kind of season he had a year ago. I don't know if it's going to be quite as easy this next year because he's such a known commodity.
No surprise this year, right? No surprise.
I see on social media he works his tail off and he's prepared himself for this year. I'm anxious to see how he does.
All right. What do you say we jaw a little bit about, you mentioned we projected how each team will fare this year. We went through the schedule for everybody.
Yep.
Picked every game, arrived at our thoughts on every squad. And I guess let's start at the beginning, alphabetically. That's the A's. That would be Augustana's Vikings, coached by OJ, Jerry Olszewski.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Tom, everyone got a chance to see the coaches poll about a week or so ago. We're going to offer some of our thoughts, and because you and I've gone ahead and chatted with each coach before the season. We've gone ahead and done a fair amount of research on the teams. When I see Augustana, obviously they're the first one here in alphabetical order. I picked them to win the league a year ago, and you saw how that went for me. But, they had a slew of injuries a season ago. They have Jared Epperson back this year. Year 2 of the Bauman project. And, the quick passing game, I think, will be the biggest difference we see with a changeover at offensive coordinator and how they're going about things. I think you're going to see Augustana play a little bit more left to right than straight downfield, which seemed to be such a heavy reliance for them in the past. And I think that they're going to look to get rid of the football just flat out faster than they have been. They took a fair amount of sacks last year, and that was problematic for them. I don't see a reason why this team can't put up 35 points a game. I think that this can be a really strong offense. And if anything, my concerns are probably on the defensive side of the football. They graduate their 3 top defenders and leaders from a season ago on a defense that was good but not great last year. So, that's definitely a little bit of a concern I would have. Then, if I go ahead and I take a look a little bit further, they start off the season with a pretty soft schedule. Then from there, they have a real grinder, after month 1. And I kind of fear that a bad stretch could pop up again. And I was high on them a year ago. They finished 7-4. You know what? I could see them being better than that, Tom. But at the same time, I'm going to land them at 7-4 for all the reasons we talked about earlier with that top 8 and all the parity we're going to see.
Yeah, without Eli Weber and the big guy up front, what was it, Logan Swanson? I think it's going to be a difference on the defensive side of the ball. You're a bit more bullish on the Vikings than I am at 7-4. I see the good start like you do, the easy opening month, but the back half, I think it's going to bite them.
Yeah, well, and you know what? Logan Swanson was impactful enough that he didn't even play last year for the Vikings, and you still have him in your head. So there you go. But no, our next group up is Bemidji State. And when I take a look at the Beavers, you know what? I thought in the offseason that they were losing more than they were, Tom. They bring back 9 starters on each side of the football. This program is taking a little further step each year. They lose Brennan Bolio, who was a dynamic downfield threat for them. So Brandon Alt's going to kind of have to figure out how they can get that same type of electricity in the offense. But, they bring in Ali Muhammad, like we referenced earlier. I think he's going to be 1,000-yard back for them. And I think he's going to add a certain power running dynamic that they've kind of not had so much over the last few years. They bring back all 5 starting offensive linemen. There's a whole lot to like on that side of the ball. Then on defense, you bring back 9 more guys. They do lose their defensive coordinator, Marcus McLinn. He went back to where he played to be the DC at Wisconsin Whitewater. And University of Sioux Falls former DC, Joe Ford, steps in. Joe Ford always had solid defenses at Sioux Falls. I would expect nothing different here. I would expect them to be a physical squad. And, they didn't find they're the only team in the conference who did not find a game for their open week, which was week 6. So as I take a look at them, I have them going 9-1 in the league. And I see them, kind of once again taking kind of that next step.
All right, second your assessment there, and I've got the Beavers winning the Northern Sun this fall. We've got a couple of teams right with one loss, and I've got them beating Mankato, the other team that I have right at the top. Not to let that cat out of the bag. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Concordia St. Paul is next. The Golden Bears, I don't have quite the same outlook on. Since COVID, they've only won 1 ball game each of the last 2 campaigns. Connor Quartz comes back at quarterback. Dual threat player who really hasn't been dynamic yet in his career. He brings plenty of game experience and has ability. Jalen Richardson at running back, I think, may be one of their top football players. He is a transfer from Northern Iowa. I think plenty of other squads in the league would be just fine having him at running back. He can do a lot of things. Their top tackler from a year ago, Andrew Ignarski, hasn't returned for a final year. He's moving on, post football. Cyrus McClure is one of the top DBs in the league, playmaker for him on that side. When I kind of look at them overall, it seemed like CSP was better. I always kind of thought that they were a team that was better than to be in the conversation for the teams in the lower third. Coach Courier had this group 5-6 years ago to the point where you'll recall, Sioux Falls went there for an opener and kind of got punched in the mouth by him.
Yeah, I got their lunch handed to them and the money stolen out of their pockets.
And, they've kind of taken a step back here, and it's hard for me to look at they have the toughest schedule in the conference, along with Southwest. And I have them winning 2 games just because I just don't see a lot of daylight in that schedule they have.
I think the Golden Bears are going to struggle to even get 2 wins. So you're a little more optimistic than I am on the Golden
that was
Bears.
Tom Frederick said that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep, you bet.
So moving on past the Golden Bears, if we take a look at Mary, this is probably the squad I think is probably in the most flux year to year. Craig Bagnell, the head coach, goes and takes a job at the University of South Dakota as a position coach. But, he's looking to move up. Can't blame him. And they bring in brand new head coach Shan Schillinger, who played for the Montana Grizz during their glory days, and then the Atlanta Falcons as well in the secondary. He took over in the spring. He's been an assistant at a few different places. No head coaching experience, and he took this over in the spring after they had gone ahead and started spring ball. So to say that he's a little bit behind on things, no fault of his own, is inevitable. So I think this is going to be a tough year for them because of the fact that they're in such a transition where they didn't really get a chance to install whatever he fully wants to do. And, they lose guys like Kittner, who's been an all-world player for that program, Logan Nelson, the running back Small, a bunch of guys, and from a team that only won 2 games a year ago. So Jesse Forknell, who had been at Mankato, he's going to take over at quarterback, presumably, and they're going to need to develop some weapons. And I think this is going to take some time. And I think that's a huge ask for a brand new coach who isn't familiar with the league in the first place. So I actually don't have them winning a football game. They may end up beating Minot. They may end up, beating Concordia. But I'll be honest with you, I have those other 2 a little bit ahead of them. A lot of it because of what they were able to do in spring and otherwise.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. 0 wins for Mary out of the mouth of Matt Witwicki. I'm a little more positive about what might happen in Bismarck. A little more positive, but not much. It's not going to be a standout season up in North Dakota for the Marauders, that's for sure.
Duluth is next. Mixed bag here with Duluth. They lose a lot of offensive weapons, Tom. They lose Armani Carmichael, Bynum, Ogile, Wade Sullivan, he's been there, a long time. And so you take a look at all that they lost in terms of production. So they're going to need to replace that. But at the same time, they bring back plenty on the offensive line, a lot of talent there, a lot of size. They have a rushing quarterback, and they got some running backs that they feel good about. I have a feeling offensively, Tom, we may see them turn back the clock a little bit. You may see a little bit more power UMD football and little less high flying that they become a little over the last few years. Defensively, they bring back a whole bunch. Marcus Gladowski, all-league player at safety. Brad Dottie comes back at linebacker after an injury. I don't know if he's going to be available immediately in the season, but he's a huge piece for them. And a lot of their other top tacklers are returning. I wouldn't be shocked if the UMD had the top defense in the Northern Sun this year. And if you pair that top defense with a really physical quarterback who's like tackling a linebacker.
Kyle Walljasper.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling you're going to see them with an interesting identity this year because he's a hoss. And I have them going 8-3. I would not be shocked if they went 9-2 and made the playoffs. I have them right on the outside looking in at the moment. But I think that they're going to be a very physical team that not a lot of squads are looking to play.
Oh, man, we've got a big divergence of opinion on this one. I don't see the Bulldogs faring well against the league's top schools at all. For
Okay.
whatever reason, I just went through that list and I came, no, 8-3 seems like wishful thinking to me. Can we go back to that slide for UMD?
Yeah.
You guys on your Elite 100 have Aiden Williams. Here, the player to watch offensively isn't Aiden Williams. I find that interesting.
Well, most of the time when you have a players to watch, you're going to see that being an upperclassman or somebody who's finishing out their career, and Aiden Williams is not finishing out his career yet.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for the clarification.
yep. And for what it's worth, Aiden Williams on Duluth is one of the top ranking offensive linemen in Division II football, according to our scout, Josh Buchanan.
Okay. Thanks for the info there, bud.
Yep. Now, the next one we have up, Minnesota State Mankato. Man, did they play good down the stretch, and you can see some of the guys there in the graphic that they return. Hayden Eckern is becoming one of the top quarterbacks in the Northern Sun. Dual threat, really tore up Colorado Mines at the end of the year, showed a lot of what they can do. Physical offensive line that should be solid. Butler Lawson comes back at running back, 1,000-yard, 12 scores. So that's a lot of old school Mankato, let's run the ball. They lost their 3 top pass catchers, okay? So they're in the process of trying to kind of figure out that piece with some of those guys we mentioned earlier, some of the transfers that came in, for example, from D1 programs. I don't expect that to mesh right away. And the fact that they're strong at tight end, I think you pair this all together, and I think you have some similarities with what Duluth's going to do, Tom, and being very physical and trying to enforce their will on people until they become more confident in their passing game and some of the new weapons they have. Moving to the defensive side, they'll be very young on the defensive side of the football, and they're going to have plenty of production to replace, okay? They also lose defensive coordinator Jim Glogowski, who's been with Todd Hoffner since 2016. And that's a big loss because of the fact that Glow was kind of Todd's right-hand man. Now, Todd Taylor, defensive line coach for them, will take over, and obviously he was under Glow. So I'd imagine you're going to see a lot of similarities in approach. But, at the same time, Glow had a certain experience with that group. And, you take a look overall at how they finished the year last year, Tom. I'm not sure they're quite the same team that they were when we last saw them against Mines. But at the same time, I still have them going 10-1 and having a high ceiling.
I have the Mavericks going 10-1 as well and finishing just on the heels of Bemidji in the league race.
Fair enough. Minot State is our next one here, I believe, on the list. Or actually, you know what? Did we pass them, Brandon, or is Moorhead the next on our list? Oh, you know what? Let's go to Moorhead. So Moorhead, the Dragons, young squad a season ago, still fairly young, only 8 seniors on this team. They established some young offensive stars a year ago. Jack Strand took over at quarterback. He's a high ceiling guy, 6'5", 220 frame, and threw for 2,200 yards, 16 scores, and 64% passer. Gage Florence caught 100 balls. Ryan Bieberdorf's got 1,600 career yards coming into the season as a Dragon. So they bring back plenty of weapons. The challenge that they really have, though, Tom, they were the worst team at running the football in all of D2 last year, averaging 1 yard a carry and 27 yards per game. That's hard. And then at the same time, they were allowing 5 sacks a contest, which was also the worst in Division II. So the offensive line and everything that goes along with it is certainly going to be an area of focus. And, they're going to continue to be the kind of team that gets rid of the football quickly and is very tough on the perimeter. They are a good squad in that passing game. The defense, I think they're going to be a little bit better than worse, but they're not a team that's going to shut you down like some of the top defenses in the league. But at the same time, they can play, and I think they're one of they can play with squads like Wayne. They lost 10-7 to them last year. They lost at Duluth 36-28. So they're not going to be overwhelmed by those teams typically. But the problem of them allowing as many sacks as they do and putting their quarterback in that spot makes it hard to have ongoing success. I got them 4-7 this year. What are your thoughts?
I'm in sync with you there.
Okay.
I hear Justin Timberlake in the background there, tearing up your heart, don't you?
Oh boy.
4-7 sounds about right for Moorhead. Now Minot is next.
Yes. So Minot being up next, we've got Ian Shields, brand new head football coach. Entertaining guy. We did an interview with him, and he runs an option offense, a speed option offense. I'm kind
Not
of
the
anxious.
wishbone,
no. The speed option is going to see a little bit more passing, a little bit more of a modern look to the option offense, I guess you would call it. They like to waddle. Have you heard of this waddle thing that they claim all the time?
No.
Waddle, which stands for win all day long. If you hadn't heard it, they have waddle all over their hashtags and stuff like that. So if you hadn't seen it, figured I'd introduce it to you.
Sort of like winners win and built different. This is waddle.
There you have it.
Okay.
I chatted with Coach Shields a week and a half ago. He said, Matt, we got 53 new players. So that's a lot of new players on a football team. He said, we're kind of at about a 100 level learning right now. He said, but we're making progress and the kids have a lot of energy. So he understands that they're not going to just go ahead and tell the league, hey, here we are. But at the same time, he's looking to go ahead and be a tough out for teams because they're playing a style that no one else is going to be seeing, with anybody else in the league. So he arrived in the winter and had a chance to work through some of their stuff in the spring. So I'm going to give them a leg up on some of the other teams like a Mary. And so I have them going 2-9.
Well, you've got them doubling my win total on my chicken scratching sheet here.
You don't have faith in the option.
Not in this neck of the woods, no. If it's Darryl Royal calling the plays, maybe.
We'll see. You know what? One thing I do want to mention before we move on is they do have a transfer quarterback from Portland State, Dondre Fair, who I think is going to get a real good shot at running that offense. And he may become a guy that we talk about a little bit more. Real good athlete.
Portland State, remember what the offense they used to run years ago was called?
I don't.
Come on. The run and shoot.
I didn't realize that they were. I think of the Houston Oilers when I think of that, Tom.
Well, it's another dated reference from the old man here. Yeah.
Well, I do come to you for that. So
it's my book. That's my stock and trade.
Northern State. A lot of our fan base, Tom, up in Aberdeen, South Dakota.
They're got a fan base. Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. Loyal fan base. Fantastic defense a year ago. Offense probably struggled a little bit more than it soared. Quarterback leaves for Dickinson State, Anthony Vespa, who had been at Missouri Western, is going to more of a pocket passer. He's going to take over. He's going to have Ingram and Dakota Larson returning after a year off. I think that gives them a puncher's chance, Tom, with just about anybody in the Northern Sun with those two. They also have an interesting wideout that's coming from Davidson, transfer Braden Oakley, who they ran an option at Davidson, and he did a lot of little things for them, carries, all kinds of different stuff. And I have a feeling they're going to try and get him involved in what they do. Offensive line, good depth, as does the D-line. Early schedule, or the easiest schedule in the entire Northern Sun. This is according to to my own research, and what I'm getting at here, and after we post this, don't be fighting me in the comments here, folks. But 6 games that they have that I think they're going to be double-digit favorites. They play Mary, they play Minot, they play CSP, they play Southwest, they play Moorhead, and they play 4-7 Northern Michigan. That's 6 games right there that they're probably going to be double-digit favorites. Would you agree?
I don't disagree.
Okay, so
Although you're trying to say your rating system is better than Massey when it comes to strength of schedule now?
without question. But thanks for bringing up Massey. So, Coach Schmidt likes his defense even better than he did a year ago. And so all this sounds great for the Wolves, but the squad just has to finish better than they have been the last few seasons. The last 2 years, they are, in their last 2 games are combined 0-4 when they really needed it. And this year, they have the easiest schedule in the conference, as I mentioned, but they start off at Bemidji, and then they host Duluth, 2 teams that they've had a lot of problems with. And so if they start off 0-2, that's a lot to dig out of right off the bat. I have them going 7-4. How do you see them?
I think the return of wide receivers Ingram and Larson are going to scare the pants off secondary of most teams they play this fall. Now, I think 8 or 9 wins is possible for the Wolves if, and that's a mighty big word, if they can beat Mary.
Ooh, I think Coach Schmidt's going to like what you just had to say there.
I mean, they've had some problems with the Marauders of late. You've got to admit that.
Absolutely, and you know what? He's talked to me about that very thing. He's mentioned that. So, okay, now we get to the Sioux Falls Cougars. Lot to unpack here. As we mentioned before, Jim Glogowski, Mankato, DC, has taken over the program. Seems like he's been pretty well received by the fan base. And, just a lot of brand new staff he brought in, and it's a new regime altogether. And they've got a week 1 matchup lined up with Mankato. So there's all kinds of stuff going on, with his hire. Expect the Cougars to operate a little bit, I think, like Todd Hoffner and Mankato have done in the past. I expect Adam Mullen to start, but I think that as a the guy who started the last 2 seasons, he hasn't been prolific. He's been solid, and I think you're going to see plenty of Cam Dean, the Mankato transfer, along with him, because he's got he can offer a little bit of a different. He's got a little bit of burst with his legs, and so I think the combination of the 2 complements each other very well. A much different offensive identity for the Cougars going forward. You mentioned their offensive coordinator, Lucas Luters. He's going to bring much of what was successful for him at Morningside to Sioux Falls. And I would expect them to be almost a 60-40, pass to run split. Thurl Reisdorfer and the ground and pound of recent years past isn't coming through that door anytime soon. Amari Grosskopf returns on the D line to kind of help anchor what I think will be a pretty solid wall for the Cougars up front. But they're going to be pretty young elsewhere. And I think that's something to kind of look for, is how much depth do they have behind that front group. Very tough opener. And then, don't forget later, they're making a trip to Pitt State, one of the toughest places to play in D2. I think that's going to be this will be the toughest year that Glow and company will be this transition year, because I think he's doing a great job with recruiting and some other things. And I think he's building this program. He just needs to get through this season. I have them going 7-4. I think that they're going to have high and low points this year, being a young squad, but I think they're also going to show promise to the Cougar fans as well.
Please don't call me a homer. I hate the word. I try to be as unbiased as possible when I broadcast a game, but I think you are selling the Cougars short. Now, I don't know if that's 8 victories or 9 wins, but 7 seems too low to me. We'll
Fair enough.
see.
Fair enough.
We'll see come November.
Yeah. Southwest Minnesota State is next. And, this squad proved me wrong last year, Tom. I did not have them winning 4 games. And,
remember their start last year? It was gangbusters. Then all of a sudden the wheels fell off.
You know what? They played Duluth to a close game in their opener at Duluth. Then they won 4 straight. But let's be honest. I mean, it wasn't exactly a murderer's row of squads. They played Mary, they played Concordia, Minot, and Upper Iowa. Now, I wasn't sure that they're going to win those football games, but Coach Underwood, I think, did a great job with this squad. The challenge, though, is they did lose their next 6, and all of them, with the exception of one, by, a healthy measure. Yeah. Running back Jesse Sherwood, who was basically going to be an All-American last year, but then got dinged up. He's gone. Top offensive player, probably by a distance. Then linebacker Auntie Burns, who is a historically good defender for the Mustangs. He's gone. Big losses that we're talking about here, Tom. The defense returns a lot. Good depth on the D-line, seasoned tacklers at the backer spot, a lot of experience in the back half. I think my biggest concern is probably the offensive side. They bring back, they have some quarterback depth concerns. They're very young at that position. Marcus Martin played a fair amount last year. 6 picks, 4 touchdowns, completed 50% of his passes. That's not going to work for winning football. So they're going to have to improve there. Donnie Austin at running back, a hard-nosed runner, I think maybe, probably one of their most productive players coming back on offense. He had over 500 yards a year ago. I think most of those were against Sioux Falls, weren't they?
He had a good game against the Cougars and a loss, yes.
They have 85 on the roster a season ago. They now have 108 guys. So I think it speaks to what Coach Underwood is doing and building there. I think the biggest challenge they have this season is that their schedule starts off, at Minot, a game that we think they probably should win. Then they go from there with Bemidji, Wayne, Duluth, FCS, Valparaiso, Augustana, Northern State. Ooh, Vegas is going to have them going 1-6, if you know what I'm saying, after 7 weeks. So I think that's going to be their biggest challenge is how many of those games are they going to end up capturing and how much air are they going to be able to keep in the balloon with that in mind?
What do you
have them going 2-9.
2-9. Same thing here. I'd love to see Coach Underwood, the former St. Cloud State boss, and he's got Sioux Falls ties with both Augustana. He was a player there, and he was a defensive coordinator at USF back in the 90s. I'd like to see him turn things around, but 2-9 seems about right to me as well.
Sure. Next we have Wayne State, and Wildcats last year made the playoffs. Can they continue this climb or even maintain it? I think is what a lot of people are asking right now, Tom. Nick Bone returns at quarterback, and he was, kind of their situation a year ago, a guy who did so much for them and really important to their team's success. And I think at the end of the year last year, you and I thought that maybe he was the single most important player to their team's success in the entire league. That said, they return 4 offensive linemen. They get a starting center from Sioux Falls who came over in the portal. So they've got they got to like what they've got up front. And then, you pair that with the fact that they do lose their 2 starting backs from a year ago. But Latravius Boyd and Karin Lynch, they're expecting to get some punch out of the running game from a little bit bigger backs. And with that said, they also bring back Jaden Johnson at wideout, who beat a whole lot of defenses downfield a year ago. On defense, they return 8 starters. Rex Becker is one of the top performers up front. And then Alex Kowalczyk, who we mentioned earlier, kind of patrols the middle of this defense. And I take a look at them, and I start to think, maybe am I underrating them at 8-3? I could see them being even a little bit better than that. I'm going to call them 8-3 because of all the parity I see in the league. Tom, what did you land on when you looked at the Wildcats?
Well, first of all, I like Nick Bowen, that's for sure. I think he could have been the player of the year last year. But I've got him at 9 wins. Were they real last year, for real, or just a one-season wonder? We'll see, but I got him at 9 wins according to these chicken scratchings in front of me here.
Fair enough. The last group we need to review, according to the alphabetical listing on the Northern Sun site, is Winona State. Kind of felt like a tale of two seasons a year ago for Winona. They start off with an 8-2 record, big 38-14 win over Wayne. They beat USF. Defense is playing fantastic. And then the final 2 games, it kind of looked like they didn't belong with teams like Mankato and Bemidji, as they lost 40-13 and 31-7. Both pretty big setbacks to finish out the year. So I kind of has me wondering, which squad are they? They bring back some top defensive players, but they're also going to miss Carter Duxbury up front and, in the pass rush. And I thought Mitch Schnickner last year was like a heat-seeking missile in the run support game from back in his safety position. I think really a strong player that's going to be missed. Coach Berge and his staff, I think, have done a really nice job playing good defense right from the jump when he took over. I think the offense is what I'm going to be looking at this year, because as the year finished a season ago, I was very concerned about their production. And unfortunately, that didn't change any as things moved on. They need to be able to establish the run better against good teams. And the O-line had some challenges against some of those better squads as well, as did the production at the quarterback spot. Cole Stenstrom comes in from University of South Dakota. And, we mentioned Camden Dean from Sioux Falls earlier, a guy who runs very well. Maybe some people would say that's his biggest strength as a signal caller. I think Cole Stenstrom has some of that too, where he can go ahead and really open up the Jets. Matter of fact, the Yotes had moved him to running back for his final season there. So I think that may add a little extra element, his ability to make plays with his feet. So we'll have to see if he ends up being the starter or he's in a timeshare for that quarterback spot. But Ty Gavin returns in the run game, who can be a real game breaker. Had a little, got dinged up at times, but a lot of production is gone at the wideout spot for them. So I do have some real concerns, in my opinion, for how they're going to be offensively. I also think that they have a tougher schedule than they did last year. They open up at non-con Saginaw Valley State in the GLIAC, who was a team that we had ranked in the top 25 for a little bit a year ago. So the slate really doesn't get any easier with that first game and that opener. So, I have the Warriors over 500 in what's a tough schedule, but I only have them landing at 6-5. And, I need to see more offensively to have them higher this season.
Winona is a definite middle-of-the-pack team to me, and I've got them 5-6. One game worse than you do.
Okay.
We'll see. So, come November then, who does the NSIC send to the playoffs? Maybe not who, but how many? 2 teams, 3 teams? I'm going to defer to Sir Witzelot's judgment here on this one.
Well, Tom, I think there's a few factors that go into this. Obviously, you and I chatted briefly about this the other day. How many teams are the Lone Star Conference going to send? How much are the RMAC going to send? Right now, if I had to pick the field, I like what Pueblo has done in the offseason. I think that they've got a lot of weapons, and I wouldn't be surprised if offensively they have a lot of firepower, and I think Pueblo can challenge Mines for that league. I don't know if they beat them, but I think they'll challenge them. And I think both teams make the playoffs. So that's 2 teams right there. I think the Lone Star will have Angelo win the league simply because there isn't an immediate number 2 ready there to take them over. But I think someone else in the Lone Star is going to sneak in. So that means 4 teams. And then that would leave 3 to come from the Northern Sun. I have in this order Bemidji, Mankato, and I have Wayne. How about yourself, partner?
I can live with those choices. I really can. We had 4 last year, and they ended up playing each other in the first round.
If the Lone Star does not get a team who steps up as a true number 2 in that league, I would then be looking at Duluth as my next squad.
Yeah.
How about you?
I don't see the Bulldogs making it. I don't. I see Sioux Falls in front of them, and maybe even Northern in the hunt ahead of Duluth, in my opinion, which isn't worth much.
Fair enough.
I don't know about you, but my fanny is telling me that's about as much as I can sit through for the first episode. And I want to thank you, Whit. I really want to thank you for not making one mention about the hair. Much appreciated. Don't ruin it. Don't say anything.
Your hair looks, I've never seen it look better.
All right. Rest assured, fans, we will be back next week and all season to discuss the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference football scene. The NSIC Weekly Podcast is a production of D2Football.com. Thanks to Brandon Meisner for producing this week's release. Whit, Brandon, and a host of others get together every Sunday night at 7 for a lively discussion of all things D2 on X, formerly Twitter. YouTube as well?
Yes, YouTube as well.
Okay, be sure to check them out. That's Sunday nights at 7. For Matt Witwicki, that guy over there, I'm Tom Frederick. If you want to send either of us a comment or a question, you can use X/Twitter to do so. Matt is at WitD2Football. That's Wit with 2 T's, even though Witwicki only has 1. That's WitD2Football. And I'm at TFredMuggs, Muggs. We appreciate your patronage. We hope you return next time on the NSIC Weekly Podcast. So long.